Mi amigo. So, I'm here to speak upon, this might be able to be something, speak through you to everybody, to my cousin, man. Look, dog, you're the reason why I'm digging into everything, because from the beginning, since I've been kind of annoyed with the message I sent you, you know what it says, and I need to blast that out. But, I can't fathom, and no one can, logically and rightfully, that I know you've had your problems, Mike, but man, ain't none of them, nothing you've ever done can convince me to rationalize how many years you've been in prison versus how many you've been out since you've been 18, dog. Like, Mike, man, I love you so much, dog. Like, you're my best friend of all time. Dream, like, dream, you're the best friend. Like, you're the best. Like, there's no better friend. Like, loyal, so loyal. You've never been mean, bro. You've never been a mean-spirited person. You've always been funny, Mike. There's just your character. I couldn't get it right. But then I'm like getting into the prison system, of course, and I'm getting, of course, racism. And a large, I'm not racist, but I love the sisters, and all my friends are black. Pretty much all of them. Guess what? That's what happens whenever you're poor as fuck and you grow up in the hood all the time. You know I did. You know how I grew up. We don't need to discuss that. My homeboys do too. If you need to be anything, if anybody needs to certify anything. And that's why I'm an enigma for the intelligent motherfuckers. See, history, they want to get into facts. Facts don't mean shit. Let me tell you, this is what matters. Whenever there's too many facts, you must get into the philosophy of the story, okay? You must get into how we got here. And, so, massive African-American incarcerations. Okay, I'm going to break this down for you very simply. This is easy to figure out. Okay, because it also coincides with where racism got created and started. Because guess what? Believe it or not, to the contrary of what America believes, even African-Americans believe this. Don't get offended whenever I tell you this. Racism didn't start at the Civil War or the Revolutionary War or when we picked you up on ships. You were slaves. Now the hatred from them towards a group of people might have started from slavery, but it's not racism. So let's get that straight. Let me tell you how this breaks down, bro. I'm a nasty motherfucker, and you can't Google this because it ain't Google. They don't put that shit. It ain't out there. This isn't out there. So, racism. This is how it happens. So over time, this is why they don't write it in American books, really. But there were so many Irish, low-class, white slaves, okay? This is what they were. But, truth be told, homie, white people just didn't work as good. And look, Africa was not into slavery at the very beginning. And the beginning started with the Portuguese and the Spanish, okay? Before there were slaves in America, there were slaves in the Caribbean. And there's a reason why the Caribbean is full of black Spanish-speaking people. In Brazil, having black Portuguese-speaking people, okay? That is because the Spanish Inquisition and all of that shit. And the reason why they knew that black people were the best working slaves, you want to know why? Because the Moors conquered Spain, just like the Moors conquered Italy. That little nappy gene runs deep, okay? And it ain't their fault. They are the beginning of society. So, like, their sophistication was much higher than Europeans. Religion, Jesus, Moses, Noah, Aristotle, Socrates, Plato, Homer, they all went to school in Egypt. There's a reason why history starts in Egypt, okay? They got jacked anyways. But they were enslaved in America, okay? But all of these years, it was manpower, manpower, manpower. So slaves were everywhere. It wasn't racist, it was slavery. Where racism really got created was in America during the Industrial Revolution, and that was the beginning of it, okay? And that was after slavery got abolished in America. It had been abolished in England about 30 years before. And so so the machines are coming in around this time already. So that's why they were able to, or were willing to start, getting rid of slavery, because the machines were able to were able to displace them. There wasn't no fucking moral epiphany from nobody. You can dream that up and go try to break that theory. I promise you, there was no moral epiphany. The moral epiphany came along whenever you were able to decipher that there's machines that can outwork slaves. Therefore, we don't need to be slaving people, and then people got put in their heads that is the wrong thing to do. And that happened through the masses of society. No single human being said this is wrong and all of a sudden decided to change everybody. No, they realized that they could make more money off the machine. But the transition wasn't immediate. So what they had to do was, you're dealing with Africans who've been in this country for centuries at this point, who've never been given education, been taught the real ways of society or how to live, but being enslaved, institutionalized to the surroundings in society, okay? So they weren't too, we wrote this, kind of wrote history as if, slaves got beaten all day, every day. That's impossible, because if we did that, they'd be in the hospital bed all day, and we wouldn't be able to get work done. Facts. Logic. Facts. So, it was a slow transition. So the slave didn't want to just run out and get sent off to the streets with nowhere to live amongst a world that has no way to live, and I don't even know how to live. I can barely speak their language. They've already got this idea about me. So they was like, no, we'll stay. So for about 40 years, it was limbo. But as it got obvious that it wasn't worth using slaves anymore, jobs were limited to the amount of people. And whenever the black person couldn't get the job, they would notice that the white man would get it first. But anyways, the white man would get it first. So what happens is, so now we're in an era where you don't live on the plantation of the owner and live on the plantation of the owner. It's a 2-for-1 deal. Now you're in urban areas. Cities started being developed really heavily around this time right here in America. So they started. Whenever you were couldn't pay for anything. You were, congregating in one area, and you couldn't afford society, and you were noticing that the job you could get was being filled by the white guy who was not as good as you at the job. The media and you couldn't go yell at your landlord because they lived elsewhere. You couldn't get mad at the owner of the job because they were elsewhere. So what ends up happening is hysteria, and the journalists and media started putting out things like the white man, even the low-class white man benefited from the hands of slavery. So, theoretically, that is correct, and you look at this white guy who's taking your job, but that becomes suffice to attack instead of the owner who created this system. And see, in many books and many intelligent people, they all come to the conclusion once they dig into this deep enough that it was the class that was created. So I'm going to get into part 2, and we're going to hit the streets where there ain't no jobs prior to the prison system rise. Holler at your boy.